about some DBQ, learning the Dbq chart. This is something I wrote many years ago to help my students understand the Dbq. It is very primitive. I looked at it a minute ago and thought, well, this is still so basic, I'm almost embarrassed about it. But it's worked for many years. I've had hundreds of kids pass the AP World and AP European exam. So it worked for them, it can work for you. I'm doing this for my current 2020-2021 students, but I'm also going to keep this video online at my YouTube channel so that future students can look at it, or kids that transfer into my class. So anyway, but in this case, it's going to be the next assignment number if you're currently sitting in one of my classes. I wish I had known how to make YouTube videos before. It would have been handy to have a bunch of these saved up, so whenever a kid transferred in, I could, tell them, hey, go look at this video. So anyway, this is something I made for my students so they would learn how to group documents and write a thesis. It's very basic. All right, so let's go on here to the next slide. Dbq Basics. All right, here's what a Dbq is. It stands for Document-Based Question. So write that down. Document-Based Question. And the AP World History, AP World, European, and U.S. History exams are all identical now. The multiple choice is 40%. The Dbq is 25%. The SAQs are 20%. They're the scariest ones. And the LEQ, which sounds horrible but really is not that bad, the LEQ is 15%. Problem with the LEQ is it's at the end of this 4-hour exam, and you are likely to be exhausted, and there will not be much gas in the tank. Anyway, the theory on the AP history exams is once you get 50% of the exam right, you've passed. And my goal every year is to get my kids' multiple choice up to 75%. I can do that in Euro usually. I can definitely do that in macro. AP World is hard for me to do. Not that there's anything wrong with my AP World students. They're just young, and this is the first time they've done it. By the time you become a junior, this will be old hat to you. Actually, if this year goes okay, 2020-21, writing a Dbq is going to be old hat to you anyway. So you're going to be good at this. All right, so Dbq Basics. First thing you need to know is there's a question. Let me go back to the math there. I think I went too fast on that. What I said was, if I can get you up to a 75% on the multiple choice, that means 75% of 40 is 30. Remember I told you that to pass you need to get about 50% of the stuff right. That's to get a 3. So if you go to the Dbq and you can get 20 out of 25 points, it's worth 25% of the grade. If you can get 20% of that, you got 50% right there. So a lot of teachers' strategy is for their kids to have a high multiple choice score and almost a 100% Dbq score, and then they've got a 3 regardless of what they do on the rest of the exam. So that is my strategy. I can tell you that the multiple choice on the AP World and AP European exams is very difficult. I've had kids cry after the AP European exam. I've had kids with 6 AP classes come out and say that was either the hardest or sometimes the second hardest exam I've ever taken. But I have really high European pass rates normally. But anyway, there's a prompt or a question for the Dbq, and then they give you a list of documents. They're all supposedly now there's always going to be no less than 6, no more than 7. Back in the day, AP European used to be 15 documents. But an AP World would be about 10. But now all the exams are the same. So once you learn this in my class, you're going to use it in the other. Now, I'm pretty strong-willed on this. I put my kids in a box. I train my kids how to do this. This is why my kids did so well on the AP World and AP European exams. Last year, the entire exam was a Dbq. But I'm going to teach you this. Some of the other teachers may not like the way I teach you. So when you get in their class, you do it the way they want you to do it. But my class, do it this way. So there's always 6 or 7 documents. And then what you do is you make a Dbq chart. Now the way you're supposed to do a Dbq, teacher's supposed to hand it to you on paper. So you write all over the paper. Well, during this time of COVID, we're not going to be doing that. And so what I would have you do is make a Dbq chart. Now let me show you what they look like. This is something I made up, and I should tell you right now, they will not give you credit for this on the exam. As a matter of fact, if you do this on the exam, they don't even know what you're doing. This is just something I teach my students to learn how to do this. Now, let me show you how this is going to be handy. It takes about an hour and 15 minutes to write a Dbq that'll knock it out of the park. And so a lot of times kids will come in on a Wednesday when we're in school, and I'll say we're doing a Dbq today, and the kids will say, oh wow, we only have 40 minutes. How can you expect us to do that? So what I do a lot of times is I give the kids an abbreviated Dbq. And especially in Euro, you're going to get a bunch of these. I'll say, okay, here's your Dbq. Here's what I want you to do. Read the documents. All I want from you today is a Dbq chart and a thesis. Sometimes I'll say I want a Dbq chart, a thesis, and one body paragraph. And I know you don't know what a lot of this stuff is, but trust me, you will. So this is something I made up. I had a kid last year who wrote one on his exam, because last year was the first year they ever sent us copies of the kids' exams. And I told him not to do it, but he still managed to pass the exam, so I guess the person who read it ignored it. So anyway, that's the Dbq chart. More on that later. All right, so you make a Dbq chart, and you group your documents. Let me have a sip of coffee here. You group your documents, and what you do, what's going to go up here in the top? At the top is letters. What's going to go, letters and words. What's going to go down here are numbers. As a matter of fact, I'm going to go ahead and up top make an A, a B, I hate writing these little things, an A, B, and a C. Hopefully you can see that. Very small up there. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to group the docs. So you're going to read the question, then you're going to read the documents. The documents are you're supposed to use the documents to answer the question. And we're going to do one today. And so what you do down here is where numbers go. Okay? All right. Let's move on. Group the docs. Use the document grouping to write a thesis. And your thesis in an English class, I've learned something over the years, that the 9th grade English teachers are very good. Because rarely do I get an AP World History kid who cannot write well. It's very rare. So those teachers, and maybe your 8th grade teachers too, they do a really good job. The only issue I have is they teach you to write a thesis like, this essay will discuss the social, political, and economic effects of the COVID-19 virus, which I guess is good for English. It's horrible for AP World. It's a 0 for AP World or AP European. So your thesis should be long and ugly, and you should list some facts in your thesis. I'm getting ahead of the game here, but you're going to see you're going to see one example at the end of this. So I came up with a saying. Now let me stop here and tell you I'm big into mnemonic devices. I have some unique ones. The most unique one we use in AP Macro is cigarettes will kill your mama. And if you take those letters and write them down, they mean something. When I was in elementary school, we had to memorize the Great Lakes. Do you know the Great Lakes? There's 5 of them. I still know them. Why? I just think of the word homes. Homes. Huron, Ontario, Michigan, Erie, Superior. What are the compass rose directions? NESW. North, east, southwest. How do you remember that? Nobody eats soggy waffles or shredded wheat or something like that. And so I have lots of mnemonic devices. Sometimes the letters mean something, or sometimes there's a phrase. Like in my history classes, we talk about this guy named Adam Smith, and he's famous for the invisible hand. And it's an economic thing. He goes, you don't need to set economic laws because the laws of supply and demand will act like an invisible hand. So my mnemonic device is, if you're ever, someplace and you feel somebody's hand on your leg, it's Adam Smith. And I've had kids memorize that, and 10 years later, still use that to remember who Adam Smith was. Anyway, The one I came up with for this was, and here it is, write it down. I always say a thesis should be ugly like your ex-wife. But it doesn't, I don't have an ex-wife, by the way. Although for fun, when I'm at parties and stuff, which is never, I will sometimes introduce my wife. I will say, I'd like you to meet my first wife, Teresa. And it always freaks people out. They're like, your first wife? Are you divorced? I'm like, no. They said, then why do you call her your first wife? And I say, because she is. Anyway, I do that to mess with people. Rarely, because I'm the social distance champion. I like to go camping. And speaking of camping, my hobby is hammock camping. And I have, I think, 13 hammocks. I'm not even sure. And my wife will tell people, yes, my husband has a problem, but at least it's not a drinking problem. I have so many. I have 4 of the big Hennessy camping hammocks. They're expensive. And I have these snake skins over them to protect them in the rain. Because if you're backpacking and you're 10 miles deep in the woods and there's a monsoon coming down and you're trying to put your hammock up in the rain and you're going to sleep in it overnight, you got to try to keep the thing, there's rules. You got to protect it and try to keep it dry. And so I have carabiners, I have these covers over them called snake skins, and I have carabiners on the end. And the problem is I have 4 of these big camping hammocks. And one time I went camping, and it wasn't that cold that night. It was like 40 degrees or something. But I brought my summer hammock, not my winter hammock. And you may think there's no difference. Yes, there is. I've been camping, I think, at 18 degrees in a hammock. And you can be very, very warm if you have the right gear. So anyway, I don't want to take too much time with this. My hammocks have colored carabiners. And when I see the color, I remember the story that goes with that hammock. Years ago, I took a wonderful camping trip in the mountains. The only problem was it stormed and the river got full. Some of you have seen that movie about the guy up in Alaska. That happened to him. He got behind a river and he died because he couldn't get back out. I got stuck next to it's called Into the Wild. I got stuck next to this river, but it turned out to be just a beautiful camping trip. I just stayed an extra couple of days, and I had such a good camping trip. I still have that hammock, even though it's like 12 years old now. I have golden carabiners, and it stands for, this is the hammock I took on that golden camping trip. The one I have that is the nicest one I have, which is a summer or winter hammock, has got blue carabiners because when I saw this hammock, it blew me away. The one I have that's made for hardcore rain and jungle, it's called a deep jungle. Same one the Navy SEALs use when they go on maneuvers. It's got green for jungle, and the other one has got orange. Anyway, you got to learn how to write your own, whatever works for you. So a thesis should be ugly like your ex-girlfriend, or ex-wife, ex-boyfriend, ex-significant other. Don't want to offend anybody. All right, so now let me pause it here. Now, what I did was I sent this out to my students. Now, some of you are going to be watching this coming into the class. You're going to come into my class in October, November, or something, and you're going to say, I don't know how to do a DBQ, and I say, go look at this video. What you need to do probably is take a cell phone and take a picture of this and blow it up. But anyway, let's go over this now. I'm hoping you can see it. So for those of you doing this in class, let's see, August the 20th, I hope you're looking at an actual Word document. So let's see here. It's difficult to manipulate these documents when I'm using this recording program. So I'm just hoping you can see document 1. Okay? And here's the question. How did people in different eras view their leaders? So go ahead and write that on your paper. How did people in different eras view their leaders? And then what I want you to do is number your paper 1 through 6 without skipping lines, 1 through 6 without skipping lines, and then underneath that, draw a Dbq chart. And make the Dbq chart big enough, remember how to do this, make it big enough that you can write in it. All right, it's going back from screen to screen. All right, so let's look at this. The Pharaoh has all, oh, by the way, I forgot to say something, and this should have been in your notes. Write this down in capital letters. Think in terms of 3. Think in terms of 3. Okay? What I like my students to do whether there's 6 documents or 7, I like for them to come up with 3 groups: earth, wind, and fire, blood, sweat, and tears, Father, Son, Holy Ghost. I got mad at a bunch of kids one year. I didn't really get mad. I was messing with them. And I basically, never mind, I'm not going to use that example. Think about the last time you went to the beach and you were, I'm sure, staring at people walking by. Put them in 3 groups. Pretty, prettier, prettiest. If that doesn't work for you, if you're a glass half empty kind of person, ugly, uglier, ugliest. Usually when I do a DBQ, I haven't done this in a couple of years, I had a little game I used to play with my students. There's a famous Western movie called The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. And it's got a very distinctive theme. As a matter of fact, if I can do this without crashing this presentation, I'll try to play it for you before we're done. And I used to have a little game. My classroom for like 7 years was on the 2nd floor of the 500 building, way down at the end. And what I would do is on days when we did the DBQ, I would have this theme song blasting out of my room. So I'd hold the door open, and kids could come in off the stairwell, at the far end of the hallway, because I was at the back, and they could hear that, and they're like, oh crap, Russell's got us doing a DBQ today. But I did that, again, it's a mnemonic device, to get kids to think in terms of 3. And if you've never seen The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, you can ask your parents about it. And if your parents are younger than me, because they're probably 20 years younger than me, you might have to ask your grandparents. It's an old Clint Eastwood Western. But I want you to think in terms of 3. So let's look at the question, how did people in different eras view their leaders? Okay? Well, look at number 1. The Pharaoh has always protected his people. His judgments and laws reflect his all-encompassing wisdom and foresight. Now, we did the CAPS assignment yesterday. We're not going to worry about CAPS today. We're just going to group the documents. This is something different. Normally, we would do CAPS, but to do CAPS, you'd have to know who said it. We don't know that. So, are they saying something good about him? Are they saying he's good? Are they saying he's bad? Or are they saying he's ugly? Well, it looks like they're saying something good. So what I want you to do, next to that number 1 on your paper, just write good. And then go down to your Dbq chart, and you see we've got A, B, and C up here, these columns. In the first column down here, put the 1 with a circle around it. This is just the way we do things. Now, we're going to be grouping these documents. And groups have to have 2 documents. At least they used to have to. Now they don't, but we'll come back to that later. I wrote this like 12, 15 years ago. As a matter of fact, for my current 10th graders, you may not have been born when I wrote this. Now, let's look at number 2. My youth pastor is not very good public speaker, and his attempts to get kids to fit in are really see-through and pathetic, but he's better than others I had. Now, are they saying he's good? No. But is he horrible? Well, they said he's better than others I've had. So why don't you just on your paper number 2, what the number 1 through 6 is, it's your first impression. So our first impression, this would be, how do you spell He's like, E-H-H-H-H. I don't know how to spell that. Just put spell it your way for number 2. But all we know is number 2 does not go with number 1. As a matter of fact, to tell you what we'll do, because we know number 2 and 1 aren't the same thing, let's go here and go to the second column and put a 2 in it. Okay, we're going to put a 2 in the second column. Queen 3, Lord have mercy. This is what I get for doing these videos at night. I'm exhausted. Queen Elizabeth is a figurehead only, and her ministers do all the real work to keep the country going. Well, that's clearly not good, but it's not horrible either. It's possible that this is another And if it is, then we actually have a group now, because 2 and 3 seem kind of similar, but we don't know yet. So what a figurehead is someone who's got the job, but they don't do anything. Queen Elizabeth is a figurehead only, and her ministers do all the real work to keep the country going. So here's what let's do. Just put down and put a question mark, but we might have a group. Let's look at number 4. This new vice president of sales has fired all the salesmen who aren't producing. He's unpopular, but our bottom line is sure to improve. He's fired a whole bunch of people who aren't selling anything. He's unpopular, but our bottom line is sure to improve. I have this theory that there's always one document that's hard to fit in. And I tried for years. I spent a lot of time trying to come up with a mnemonic device for it. And I remembered back when I was in college, I went to this Christian university, and the girls there were just gossips, I'm telling you. And we, the boys and girls couldn't be in the same dorm like you can in the universities now. Could not be. If you were caught in their hallway, you had to go past basically a security guard to get in the girls' dorm. You were not getting arrested, but you were getting kicked out of college. It was a serious religious school. But all the girls would talk, not all of them. That's prejudice, right? Some of them would gossip about the other girls, and they talked about this one girl who wore her jeans so tight that she would, you know how at the top of your zipper, there's like a little hole in the zipper at the end, you know, the thing you hold on to. She would take a coat hanger and she would stick it through that little hole, lay down on her back so she could pull her pants up and fasten the top button. And they would just make fun of her and make fun of her. And so when I started trying to come up with a word to be the word for the document that's tough, the word squeezer came to mind, and then I just thought, that doesn't sound right. So I tried and tried and tried, and I finally came up with the kicker. So in your notes, just write the kicker, okay? And it's something that I made up, and as we do these, but there seems to be documents, usually at least one document that is tough to do. And so what we got here, number 4, I think, is the kicker right here. Because he's firing people, but he says our bottom line is sure to improve. Now, I used an accounting term. I don't expect you to know what bottom line is, but bottom line is, you know, a company brings in $10 million in sales, but that cost, they spent $8 million to make the $10 million, so they brought in $10 million. You got to subtract the $8 million they paid out. They got $2 million left. That's the bottom line. That's how much profit they're making, and it's a good thing. So basically, I'm kind of saying this guy's good. And it's possible that that's a match with number 1, but I think that's the kicker. As a matter of fact, next on number 4, next to your paper, put kind of good, question mark, and then put in quotes, kicker, question mark. I actually know which way this is going. Haven't done it for 15 years. Okay, number 5. Stalin has ruined Mother Russia. He has killed our best and brightest, and his megalomania may yet destroy us all in a nuclear holocaust. Man, I didn't mess around when I wrote that one. I wrote all these, by the way. Is that good, bad, or ugly? That's daggum horrible. So, number 5, put B-A-D, bad. And none of these people has been really, 4 sounds iffy, but none of these people have really been bad, right? Until we got to number 5. So it looks like we might have 3 categories. It looks like we might have good, and horrible. But let's look for number 6. By the way, that's 3 categories. Good, bad, and good, and bad. That's 3 categories. And I told you to think in terms of 3. Number 6, our new swim coach does not have as a matter of fact, let's go ahead and do our Dbq chart before we read number 6. So let's put 1 in the good. Oh, so let's come up here where it says A, B, and C at the top. And next to A, I want you to write good. Next to B, I want you to write however you spell it. So, middling, lukewarm, whatever words you want to use. This is yours, okay? This is for you. And for C, put horrible, murderous, just the worst word you can think, but no F words or anything like that. I would say put good, bad, and ugly, but the problem is kids get, in the past I've had a lot of kids that every essay they ever did was good, bad, and ugly. So now, and I keep putting this thing down. So we're going to write, my fingers are too fat to do this, good, and horrible, atrocious. So we got a 1 here, we got a 2 here. Which one was the kicker? Was 4, right? So let's put a 4 here. That's the only thing we know. 3, my numbers are off here. 1, 2, 4. No, 4 was the kicker. The horrible one was 5, right? So we need to put 3 and 4 somewhere. I know where they go, and I bet you do too. But let's look at number 6 and see what we got here. So we'll go back here to number 6. Oh, I'm clicking on the wrong thing. 6 says, our new swim coach does not have the team's best interest at heart. She has the team captains at each other's throats, and some of our best swimmers have quit the team. Is she good? No. Is she Not if they're going to quit the team. She is horrible. I know you're going to say Stalin, and some of you don't know who that is. And Stalin and the bad swim coach aren't the same, but today they are. And so we now definitely have a match. 5 and 6 go in the same group now. You see how this works. What's the other good one? Well, it's that number 4. The kicker goes right here. Because the key thing is that bottom line. If the bottom line is getting better, this guy is what the people who own the company want. And so which document do we have left? We have 3. Now you have your chart filled out. And now you're going to have 3 parts of your thesis. Okay? And there's going to be part A, part B, and part C. Isn't this a beautiful thing? Okay? You've got to get this figured out now. So anyway, we've got our Dbq chart filled out. You've got headings at the top, right? Now skip down and write in capital letters, thesis, T-H-E-S-I-S. Somebody in AP World told me yesterday, they said, darn, I wanted to get my notes finished because it always takes longer than the period. And I'm like, no, my videos, the period's 45 minutes, and the videos are 40 minutes long. And she said, yes, but we have to keep stopping the film to write the notes down. So I'm trying desperately to get this under 40 minutes. But if I don't, so be it. Okay. Now, thesis, T-H-E-S-I-S. Put a hyphen, and I'm going to teach you something, and you better do it this way when you're in my class. I like a lettered thesis. Let me tell you, most 15-year-olds cannot write a thesis to save their buttocks. They just can't do it. Trust me, I've graded thousands of these things. You know, last year, that's all they gave the kids for their AP exam was a Dbq, and I read, I don't know, I think maybe like 1,400. I remember I'm an AP reader. I guess I haven't told you that. For years, they would fly us out west to grade exams. This year, we graded at home. I've been grading for, I think, 11 years. I've graded horrible Dbqs. About 6 years ago, I went and talked to, when you're at the reading, for 2 years I was in Colorado. For 6 years I was in Salt Lake City. And then we were in Kansas City 1 year. That was the year before COVID got here. Last summer we graded home. 1 year in Salt Lake City, I went up to the person in charge of all the people grading the Dbq. So this person's got like 600 adults grading Dbqs. And I went up to them, I said, listen, ma'am, I said, I make my kids letter their thesis because a lot of teachers hate this. We have teachers at the school who don't like it, and it's their class. They've been to training for their course. If they don't want you to do it, don't do it. In my class, you better do it. So what I did was, I asked her, I said, ma'am, I have my kids letter their thesis. Are you okay with that? And it almost seems bad now because of COVID. I was standing like 3 feet away from her, and she goes, yes, sir. She goes, I wish every teacher taught their kids to do that. So I'm a big believer in this because a lot of people just write. And someday when I'm not on camera and you're in class, I'll tell you about some of the horrifically funny things I have read at the AP reading. They're just ridiculous stuff. Kids like, I'm going to fail the exam. I'm going to tell you about my birthday party. Most kids cannot write a thesis. My students better be able to do it. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to write it, and it's going to be ugly like your ex-wife. Okay, so I'm going to just talk. I guess I could type it, couldn't I? Let's see. I am using a computer. Technology's still a little... Let me type. If I lose this recording, this is the second time I've done it tonight. Yeah, I don't think it's going to let me access this Word document. You can't see it, of course, but there's this overlay over my laptop and it's hard for me to work around it. Okay, I guess I'm going to have to narrate it to you. So you wrote thesis and a hyphen. I'm going to make this as ugly as I can make it. There's some song that Garth Brooks sings. You probably don't know who that is. He's a very famous country music singer. And I don't know what the song's about, but I'll hear it when I'm driving down the road. And it's something like, sometime I thank God for unanswered prayers. Because usually you sing about God answering your prayers. He says, sometimes I thank God for unanswered prayers. And I gather he's at a party or something. And he's looking at his ex-girlfriend or ex-wife or something. And then he looks at his wife, and he's glad he wound up with this one instead of that one. I guess he prayed to get that one, the first one, but it didn't work, so he was heartbroken, and he found the new one. Now he's looking. I gather she's unattractive. It probably has nothing to do with the way she looks. And I know when I go to my class reunions, I don't look anything like I used to look. But I'm always wondering, that song always comes to mind. And I'm thinking, I wonder if my ex-girlfriends look at me like, dang, I'm glad I didn't wind up with that bald, fat thing. But anyway, I'm going to make this thesis as ugly as I can. So here we go. And I'm going to take the question and spit it back out to you. In different eras, comma, you're writing this down. In different eras, comma, people viewed their leaders as A. And I want you literally to put an A there with a circle around it as A. Now, I'm not going to say good, because that's too simple. I'm going to give you an ugly thesis, one that would make your English teacher resign their job and go start working at IHOP. A, competent is sometimes rough in their methods. A, competent, comma, but sometimes rough in their methods. That's ugly as heck. What comes next? B, put a circle around it, and let's see. B, let me see. This is our category. So I'm going to start. Write this down. This is B. Rather incompetent, but maybe essentially harmless, comma, and C with a circle around it. Well, what is C supposed to be? C, horrible and damaging to whatever they're supposed to be leading, period. Now, is that the ugliest thesis you ever seen in your life? For the thesis, you get 1 point. And if you write a thesis like that, you know what you're going to get? 1 point. 1 out of 1. You're going to get 100%. That is a well-written thesis. Show it to your English teacher. They'll throw up their hands in disgust. And they're going to say, who hired that crazy guy? Well, I'm certified in English, middle school English, but you don't need to bring that up. I used to be a middle school English teacher. But that's a good thesis. That is an excellent thesis right there. And that it's ugly, but you'll get your point. Because when you were like using those other words, it's kind of like you were arguing with yourself. They like that because they hear you think. And let me tell you the significance of that ABC. You're not writing this for an English teacher, and you're not writing it to be pretty either. You're writing it to prove to them that you know how to analyze documents and you know how to think. I like to talk about the presidents in class. George W. Bush, who you don't remember, he would just if he was reading off a teleprompter, he would do a wonderful speech. Trump is something else. I'm not even going to mess with that right now. Obama had this habit. You know, Obama's considered a great speaker, and he's another one. If he's reading off a teleprompter, he's fine. But I've seen him in press conferences where he would go. They would say, "What about this military confrontation with the Russians over Ukraine?" And he would say, and it's something he can't read off the teleprompter. And he would say, the U.S.'s position is, and I used to kind of sit there and laugh. I'd count them. Because he would usually go, 3 times. And I thought that was annoying as heck. But then he would generally come out with a pretty well thought out answer. And he'd say, well, we're formulating a plan that will meet their military efforts with the maximum defensive capability with no bloodshed. And so and he never said that speech, I'm just making it up, but he would do that. And it dawned on me that what was good about what he was doing is you could hear the wheels turning in his brain. You could hear what he was thinking. That's how I want you to write your thesis. I want these people to read your thesis and like, dang, this is a smart kid who's really put a lot of thought in this. Because let me tell you about AP World Readers, having been one, they want to give you a good score. And I use the word prejudice all the time. You know, don't be upset by me using that. I want my students to prejudice the reader in their favor. I want them to say, dang, this is a smart kid. I really want them to get a passing grade. They're not supposed to do that. They're supposed to follow what they call follow the rubric. That's what we're taught. But I want them to think that you're really, really educated and you're trying hard. Okay, so let me pause this. Well, I couldn't get the screen to let me. It's quirky, this program I'm using. It wouldn't let me get over to YouTube to show you that, play the music from the good, bad, and ugly. But I hope you got it here. Here's what you've done today. You read the prompt. You numbered 1 through 6. And remember, what you're writing down there is your initial impressions, and then you group them in groups of 3. Some teachers call this bucketing. One year I did that. I gave the kids a paper, Dbq, and scissors, and they took all the documents and they cut them up. And so what they had was, say, 6 or 7 pieces of paper. They put 3 little buckets. They weren't big buckets. They were little things, like you put pens and pencils in. And what they would do is, when they found 2 documents that said kind of the same thing, they're not exactly the same, as you saw, they would put them in the bucket together. And then when they were done, if I gave them 6 documents like I did with you, they'd have 3 buckets and each had 2 documents in there. That is the same principle of the Dbq chart. And so I just tell you, think in terms of 3, I guess that's it. So we are done for the day. I'm sorry I couldn't play the music for you. I will figure out how to do that at some other time.